Hey everybody, this is Heidi Bennett. Welcome to the Vibrant Visionaries Network. We're on YouTube and also as a podcast as Vibrant Visionaries. Today's Vibrant Visionary is a new author, but someone that's worked in publishing, and I've got a little something dusty was coming through. Somebody who has worked in that arena, but not quite this way yet. So I'm really excited to welcome Megan Tady. Hey, welcome, Megan.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'd love to hear about Super Bloom. It was recently published and how you got started, what it's all about. Just throw everything at me.
So, my debut novel is Super Bloom. I have it right here, and it came out on May 2nd via Zibby Books. And it's about a massage therapist named Joan Johnston who is grieving the loss of her love, Samuel, and she's about to get fired from her job at a luxury spa in Vermont. She gets one chance to save her job, and that's to get a glowing review from the most demanding client, a famous romance novelist named Carmen Bronze. Carmen breezes into town and she gives Joan a chance to get that glowing review. She wants dirt about the spa and she wants to set her next bestseller there. So this isn't giving too much away. Joan complies, and along the way begins to wonder if she should write that love story instead. So yeah, it's funny, it's tender, it's got all the juicy bits. I always say I love reading like the salty and sweet combined, like M&M with a piece of popcorn. Like that's what this is. It's funny, it's sweet, you cry a little, you laugh a lot. That's my hope anyway.
Awesome. And what has the experience been so far? Because this is your first novel, right? Like going through the whole process of, I don't know, whatever you feel like you want to share. A lot of times on Vibrant Visionaries, we're talking about that creative process. It's not like this linear thing. Like maybe you had steps and milestones or things you wanted to get done, but I'm sure there were unexpected twists and turns, and I'd really love anything you'd like to share about that, the process.
So this book took me 8 years from conception to now. And I used to, I would read about other authors who said, this took me a decade or 5 years. And I'd be like, why? What, what the heck? Now I understand. The book was sparked when my husband took me on a surprise trip to Vermont to a spa. And I was having a massage, and it was not a very good massage. And the whole time, I could just tell the woman, who was lovely, I could just tell she was like, her mind was not in it. She was elsewhere. And it's an energetic thing. And my face was in the face cradle. And the whole time I was like, what is her deal? What's her story? What brought her to today? What is she heartbroken? Am I her fifth massage of the day? What's it like to work in this spa? And I have a journalism background. So I've interviewed, hundreds of people in my career, and I always want to hear people's stories. So I had this sort of flooding through my mind, but it felt really creepy to sort of ask her everything I wanted to know. So I left that room not with a great massage, but with this novel idea forming in my head. And I had never written a novel. I have always written, but not so much fiction. And I struggled with gaining confidence to do it. And I didn't know, like, could I be someone who writes a novel? I just didn't see it at first. So I had started taking some local writing classes, and I was writing little chapters of this book in that course and kind of sharing it and reading it aloud. I worked on the novel for about a year, and I sent it out to agents, and I thought I was going to like make some agent's dream come true. They were going to be like, I found her. I didn't hear anything from anyone. And that was very loud. And I was like, okay, this is a really humbling thing. I have a lot to learn. So I kind of went back to the drawing board, took it apart a little bit. I mean, I did everything, A, kind of wrong, B, that you could do to a novel, like changing the tense, cutting out a character. I just really, I was like getting my MFA almost along the way. I run my own writing and editing business. And so I was working full time. I had two kids along the way who are still young. They're 4 and 7. Um, and sometimes I just had to put it down because it was hard for my sanity to work on it constantly. And then I think about a year before the pandemic or so, I got more serious about it. And I was like, I'm just going to really keep recommitting to this. And I'm going to study fiction in a completely different way. I'm gonna really, I've always been a big reader, but I'm gonna really study the books I'm reading. I took a course called How to Write a Breakout Fiction Book. And it was the first time years into this process that I started to study the 3-act structure of a book and inciting incidents and not that my book had to be a cookie cutter copy of all these other books, but I needed to know why things were working and what wasn't working in mine. I also started listening to different podcasts about writers and specifically failure, writers who have 3 novels in a drawer and are now published. I think we can even talk about this more, but we get sold all of these overnight success stories. And when it doesn't happen like that for us, we think it's because we're talentless and we should probably hang it up. We don't hear the grind and what is happening behind those success stories very often. So I really gravitated toward like, tell me how you failed, please. And I started hearing more about that. I started really studying how to write a query letter properly. I formed a writing group, and that there are tons of resources out there, to form writing groups. You can't just be like, who join a writing group? There are places that help you do that. And I started getting great feedback from people, and it was like slowly, the book was getting stronger. I queried again, and I got 15 full requests from agents. And for listeners and viewers who don't quite know what that means, you send your query letter out to an agent trying to impress them in a tiny amount of space. If they like what they've read, they say, send me your full book. And you do this happy dance thinking like any minute now. It's such a hard process to be in the query trenches. Sent it out and ultimately didn't get any offers for representation. But I got an incredible rejection letter from an agent who said, I think you have a stakes issue, meaning the stakes for your main character aren't high enough. And she was like, I can't figure it out. I'm reluctantly passing. So I cried. And then I took it to my writing group and I said, ladies, we have a stakes issue. And again, I worked on it. I worked on it for 9 more months. And I took it back to her the following fall, this agent who had said no. And often, once it's no, that's a final answer. But I took it to her again and I said, would you look at this again? And she said yes. And she said, I'm happy to see you. I will look at it again. 4 months pass. This is how long for people who are like in the trenches and are like, why is this taking so long? It is so long. It's really hard. 4 months pass. And in that span of time, I was watching the woman Zibby Owens start her publishing company, Zibby Books, who is now my publisher. And Zibby has a podcast called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. And she was named, one of New York's biggest book influencers. So I had a contact through her and I sent my manuscript to her unagented. And she came back 6 weeks later with an offer to acquire Super Bloom. And Super Bloom was in such a great shape by that point. So then I could go back to that agent and say, I have a book offer. And she said, give me tonight. She read it overnight, and she offered representation the next day. The whole thing came together in 1 week, and it was just the best. So that's it in a 7-minute or so nutshell.
I love it. And when we chatted a little while back, you said like, "Oh, this will be my first podcast," and now I can tell, you've talked with a lot of people, and you've really gotten, a great story about there that's coming out, so naturally, and it's full of, all of those different things that I love talking about, which is like, other people have done this, before you. Find your mentors or people that have already done a lot of the hard work, and learn from them. Find your other folks, the other people that are also writing, and, get in those writing groups. And I know that how useful that's been to other folks that I know that are writers. And that it takes a long time, and that it's emotional, and there's all this rejection, and then there's your own life, that can't be ignored. And so, that was a great tale. And yes, I think these days that's the thing that makes podcasts and getting together with people and getting that feedback and all that stuff, is that we learn, nothing's an overnight success. There is and it's okay to do things for a long period of time and normalize the experience of waiting for months and planting some seeds and then just letting them super bloom eventually, right? But then it takes time. How is it feeling now that it is out in the world?
It feels amazing. And, I think the patience thing is so hard because we have our email at our fingertips, and so the refreshing your email is so hard when you're waiting, and you're waiting to hear whether your book has sold, if it's on submission, or whether you're going to get an agent, or whether you're going to get a film deal. It's just very hard to put it away. And one of the things that helped me was to start working on my second book, to start writing something else to distract myself. And remember, my husband on days that felt bleak would sort of remind me, you're doing this because you love that actual part of writing. Your best days, my best days, are when I've touched the page in some way. And I've even written with, Paw Patrols in the background with my kids, and I'm upstairs, I just getting little, spurts of it. So having to really remind myself that I'm doing it because I love it, not for the book deal or the payoff. And also, that publishing a book isn't some sort of like major payout, or suddenly now I'm famous and I can where's my beach house? No, that's not really what happens. And I'm still, I've sold my second book to Zippy Books, which is so exciting, but normal life is still happening. And, the book's been out for a couple of weeks. It feels amazing. It's been so fun to start to hear from readers. And I've been hearing from people who are saying it's inspiring them to get back to writing, which is such a joy to hear. There's an aspect of grief in this book, and my character is grieving the loss of her boyfriend that she only knew for 6 months. It was a very short courtship, but it was going to be this epic love story. And I wanted to show new love. It's so rare, like that point in time, and what it's like to lose someone at the beginning of what feels so epic. And that a lot of the outside forces around my character are sort of telling her it's time to move on, and they're telling her how to grieve. So I've been hearing a lot from people, just appreciating the permission to grieve, no matter what it looks like, no matter who you're grieving and for how long you knew that person. So that sort of feedback is great. And just also people just saying, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. I laughed my butt off. That's just the ultimate. I love that. So it's been really fun.
Oh, that's awesome. And I love that there's that grief piece in there. I haven't read the book yet, but
Yes.
combining humor with discussing grief and how it's different for every person. And I've definitely experienced a lot of loss in my life, and I certainly know what it's like to, and I like that idea of writing about a fresh relationship, because you've got all these ideas. I'm sure the character has these ideas of where things might have gone, or grieving what could have been, and also maybe I even idealizing this person. I know my best friend, she passed away, and there's part of me that kind of puts her on a pedestal, and she's also like, she was an incredibly creative person, and she still influences me to this day, but she's also kind of crabby sometimes, and it's sort of fun to like think about when she wasn't in such a good mood, and how fun that could be, and her dark humor and all that. So I am glad at the opportunity to eventually read Super Bloom and be able to enjoy exploring all these different aspects that you share. And I definitely, when there's comedy in there, that's always a cincher for me, whether it's a mystery or history or whatever it is I'm reading. When it's funny, that's just like, it's got to be in there. And when we're talking about grief, I mean, laughter has got to be part of the process.
It's really true. It's really true. I mean, life is so hard, and these topics are so hard. And so I find that I process the worst of things while I'm also having comedic relief and being darkly funny. And so I wanted to capture that. And I think my journey to comedy writing and to just claiming myself as a funny woman took a while, because I think as women and girls, we're sort of taught that men are funnier, and that I have very distinct memories of being in elementary school and feeling like I had the funny sort of quip or comeback to give, but tamping it down because I wanted to be likable. And it didn't feel like funny and likable as a girl could coexist. And I think I don't know like what sort of messages, how that's kind of trickling in, but it did. I'm trying to, of course, break that at least at home for my own daughter. But as I was sort of coming along, I actually remember in my 20s taking a walk with a friend and a girlfriend, and she was like, you're really funny. And I had a boyfriend at the time who I thought was the funny one, and I think my dad was the funny one. It was always the sort of men in my life who were funnier. And so it took me a while to kind of claim that for myself and say, I'm actually going to write a comedic novel, and I want slapstick involved. I want silliness. I want goofiness. And I'm so grateful that Zibby Books and my editor went with such a zany book. It's amazing. And I also then had to really hone how it translated on the page, because at first in my early drafts, some of my humor was kind of mean. And I had Joan making little quips about the people on her massage table. And I had early readers say, like, this doesn't feel right. And I realized the balance of power, even though she was actually quite powerless in her job, in that moment when she's in the massage room, she's in authority, she's in power, and people on her table are vulnerable. And so it was kind of cringy to have her making fun of people on her table. And so I had to look at that and think about the hierarchy of power in the stories and have Joan sort of punching up or punching in, but not punching down. So, and I think a lot of the like funny humor I had also kind of learned and saw was kind of mean. So I had to rethink that, relearn it, try to figure out what, if it's not that sort of humor, then what is it? And how do I shift it? So that was an evolution as well.
Yeah, while you were saying that, I was thinking like exactly what you ended up saying, the punch down, punch up, and it all makes such a difference. And I think, when I was younger, I probably was more into that kind of mean-spirited humor when I was, in high school maybe or whatever. And then as time went by, you sort of learn, and I'm a huge consumer of comedy, stand-up, improv, comedic podcasts and all that stuff too. So you start to kind of, really learn what it is you think is funny, and also how you want to present characters, obviously somebody that people are going to be on board with and like. And sure, there's room for somebody to have the transformation from being a real wang to somebody that is learning and growing and everything. But yeah, that's cool. I like that you shared that. It's very important. It's that kind of what's the mission and what are the values of the book, the foundation that helps it have a certain energy or vibe to it when people are reading it. And it sounds like you're able to get that, and you're getting great feedback about that. So awesome. Good work.
Thank you. Yeah. And I was getting feedback that my character was unlikable, and I bristled at that as a woman, as writing a female character. I don't think men get told that their characters are unlikable. And yet I heard it a number of times. So I had to sort of listen to that. And I went back through, and, Joan is sarcastic, and you're meeting her at the worst time in her life. She's grieving. She's about to get fired. She's backed into a corner. She's working for this corporate owned spa and this, really annoying boss. She's just, life's not going so well. But were there ways that I could not soften her, but make her more relatable to readers so that they knew that underneath her causticness was a person who has a more tender side and wants to get back to some of that, wants to maintain some of her saltiness and her edginess, but sees that she's lost something and wants to get back to it. And readers know they're going to be taken on a journey with her to find that. So and they were just subtle. They were subtle shifts, but they were really important, and I'm glad I made them.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap this thing up. I'm ready to point people to where they can get your book and also follow along with what you're up to and your next book and everything. So why don't you go ahead and just share your socials, and I will share those in the show notes and for the video, below the video where the notes go.
So my website is megantady.com, and I have a lot of events listed on there. I'm on tour around different places in New England and LA and Colorado. And I'm at Meg Tady on Instagram, and you can buy Super Bloom wherever books are sold.
Awesome. I love that about books, where you can
Me
get them
too.
wherever books are sold.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know everybody's going to just really enjoy hearing your whole story, and I look forward to reading your book, and much success to you in the future.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. This was great.
My pleasure. All right, everybody, this has been Vibrant Visionaries. Again, you can find everything at vibrantvisionaries.com. The podcast is called Vibrant Visionaries. On YouTube, we call it the Vibrant Visionaries Network, where you can also find me doing other things like tasting in the Vibrant Kitchen, whipping up some recipes, and all sorts of good stuff. Thanks again, Megan, and thanks everybody for watching. Ciao for now.